Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We're always glad people like you continue to listen. You know what's kind of funny, Kyle?
What's up?
I've heard it. You know, it's spring now. We're full on springtime.
Yeah.
And I feel like, a lot of people know I'm in California. And you know that phrase, oh, spring is in the air. People say it a lot, leading up to spring. And although it's only been a couple weeks, spring has been in the air for 3 months. For like no rain, sunny days. So I'm a little nervous about the summer.
Oh,
I'm afraid it's gonna be a hot one.
That's good. Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, what's going on with you? What's new?
So we've started traveling in. You talked about a hotel story, not so good last time or a couple episodes ago, and I have one. So as you know, I went to Boston a little while ago for a speaking engagement, and I got to the hotel early. I was going to speak the next day, so I got there at like 11 a.m.
Nice.
And I did that because I wanted to get a good night's sleep, be well rested. All of us perform better when we're real well rested, right? Okay, so that night, I was like, all right, I'm going to get the temperature in this room perfect for sleeping.
Okay.
I sleep at around 67 degrees, 68. So I turn it down and I go to dinner. And when I come back, it's still warm in the hotel room. I'm like, what the heck? So I called down the front desk. I'm like, hey, is there a secret to this air conditioning? And she's like, oh, we're on a two-pipe system. Apparently that's a thing, two-pipe system. And we haven't switched over to cold yet. So like during the winter, they only do heat. And during the summer, they only do cooling. Uh-oh. And it's like that in between where they're not there yet. So I had to... So she's like, we recommend you crack the window. And
wow.
All right. So I cracked the window, and like 20 minutes later, gale force winds and like crazy rain just like slammed the window shut. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just sleeping warm tonight. So it was not ideal, but I made it work. But yeah, that was my hotel story.
Maybe there's no place for, I don't know, maybe my thinking is flawed, but I hate it when service-facing or customer-facing entities like the hotel give you an excuse or a reason.
Yeah.
Either one. Who needs to know?
Yeah.
So when they're, we're in a two-pipe system.
Right.
I don't care. It's cold or it's hot. Maybe just say, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
I don't know which I feel like I'd prefer, oh man, I'm so sorry, but unfortunately we can't do anything about that control system, today. So maybe just crack the window open. When they throw out a reason, I feel like that's almost, and they're not doing it on purpose, but it's condescending. And it's kind of like, oh, duh, you should have known we're on a two-pipe system. Yeah. And you should know how that works. I don't know. I don't like it.
I also empathize with, I agree with you, but it also, I guarantee she answers that question
totally.
35 times a day. So I can, but.
And that's probably, that's the truth.
Right.
So what else is she going to say, right? I guess... For me, I think I've heard this in my job at other retailers, at restaurants. You ask an employee because you see them in uniform or whatever, and you're like, oh, hey, excuse me, can you show me this, that, or the other? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on break.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't help anybody. And ultimately, I don't care if you're on break. I'm not saying allow me to interrupt your break. Just tell me you can't help me. Like, I don't know. Just, I heard it I remember at a bank once. I'm in line to see a teller, and it's a small branch, so not too far away, a few feet. There's the waiting area to sit down with somebody, right? Maybe open a new account or whatever. And 2 bank workers come out and they approach this guy waiting, and one lady says to the gentleman, "Oh, sorry about the wait. It's going to be a little bit longer. She hasn't clocked in yet, and I'm about to go to lunch." So it's like, okay, you're telling the customer we have to wait because you want to go to lunch? Like, I don't know. The whole... It's true, and I get it. There are labor laws, and maybe you have to go to lunch. But leave that part out. Just say, hey, it's going to be a few minutes. Like, period. Stop there. Anyway.
No, I agree. Yeah, I like it.
That's, will get me going if you're not careful. We'll save more on that later. Let's jump into this week's What Say You? This one goes back, looks like about a year. Okay, Colleen gave us a review on iTunes, or what's known today as Apple Podcasts, I think. I don't know.
I'm not sure what the difference is, but...
Titled Rock Stars, and this person gave us 5 stars. Kyle and Sean are rock stars in my book. I love listening to the conversations, and it seems I always learn something profound to take away. A good listen. Thanks, Colleen. I agree. It's a good listen. So, Colleen, thanks for affirming what we're doing here. And, of course, thank you for taking the moment to send us some stars and a review. Kyle, is there something, I don't know, profound maybe that sticks out to you? Or, in 5 years, have you walked away with any lesson learned?
Yeah, I think of one that happened just a couple weeks ago with Squirming Grub's YouTube channel. We talked to Shane and Hannah, and I asked them if they have advice for somebody with a disability that is looking to include love in their life, right? And Shane's response was, he has a disability. Hannah does not. And his response was, the game changed for me when I realized that the troubles I was having in dating were not my fault. They were due to society's interpretation of my situation as a disabled person. And that really struck me because he's a great writer. He's got a cool relationship. He has an incredible YouTube channel. He's this really great person dealing with a lot of the same disability issues and making a realization that can help everybody who has a disability, and we can all learn from what his experience was. So that's the one.
That's good. I don't know if it applies to you though. Like, maybe there is something no, I'm kidding. Sorry, that's a terrible joke, and it's just rude. I like it, and I agree with you. He made a good point there, and it's been eye-opening for me and probably a lot of people, so thanks for pointing that out. Mine actually goes back quite a bit further, and although there are a lot, I think, of profound takeaways, even just one-liners or single thoughts, one that jumps out to me pretty quickly is something we had picked up on from our friend James Miller. He's a licensed psychologist. We had him in episode 68. And I forget exactly what was said, but I think you were telling a story about how you felt like you were a burden to, I don't know, friends or family whenever you got to go somewhere because of the chair and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And James straight up asked, has anybody ever told you you're a burden.
Right.
And I think just in that moment, you realize that we have our own narratives of the way we think other people think about us, and it's not always accurate. So I just appreciated that, and that was eye-opening for me, and one of those profound thoughts that have stuck with me for over 100 episodes now.
Yeah, I like it. Lots of profound thoughts. Sean, we are so incredibly profound, don't you think?
Well, I would say most of our profound thoughts probably come from our guests.
Yeah,
but I could be wrong.
That's true.
I was wrong once before in 1997, so
yeah,
it might happen again.
I remember that.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Colleen, for this review and for helping us jumpstart the episode today. The thing we're talking about is a random thought centered around some fears that Kyle and I have or think we have or whatever it may be. I don't know. There's probably different ways to define it. But as we were brainstorming different topic ideas for this episode, we just kind of thought, you know what? We've talked about things we love, things we hate, things that are exciting to us, dreams and vision and goals and all sorts of stuff. But we really haven't specifically talked about fears. So we want to spend a little bit of time today digging into each other's top 5 fears. So, Kyle, if you're open to it, you got a list of 5 ready?
I do. Yeah, I've got my number one. All right, I'll start off here. My number one is an injury, especially when it relates to FA. FA, a lot of it is use or lose it. We know that. That's one thing that I think about. And if I have a serious injury like a broken leg, as you know, Sean, it's going to take a lot of work, as I know you put in, to get back the ability to, walk or ride a bike or a trike or whatever it is. And so, I think maybe, I don't know, can you provide any insight on that? It's not going to stop life, but it's certainly something I think about.
For me personally, with the femur injury a couple of years ago, that was the biggest thing. One thing I feel like I've learned or kind of have taken from that is being more careful on the front side. So I feel like when I'm even just moving around my house, I feel like I'm a little more cautious to move slowly, to evaluate the environment and know what I can grab and where I can grab and, what I can lean on to help me stay awake or stay upright. And although there's still that fear, and man, when I feel something kind of lose balance, even just a slight bit, my heart sinks. My stomach drops to my knees, it feels. But I feel like that injury has helped me be a little more aware and a little more cognizant and not be as willing to take a risk when I know it could be foolish. I'm all about taking risks, on the stock market or, climbing a mountain or something like that. But getting in out of the shower, I'm a little more careful. I'm a little slower. I make sure that I'm stable and steady before I lift one foot up over the rail or whatever it may be.
So I think partly what we're saying is this is a healthy fear. If it forces us to think twice about the things we're doing to make sure we don't get injured, then it's a healthy thing for sure.
Yeah. Not so long ago, I think I may have mentioned it on the podcast, but I knocked over my coffee on my keyboard. And at home, everything we do here is online. So it's like, I got to have a keyboard, right? We can't do the podcast without it. And it was a silly frustrating mistake. My arm kind of lost control for a brief second and knocked over my coffee. And so it's things like that, when they happen, I think through what could happen again. So now the coffee doesn't come anywhere near the keyboard.
Yep.
And I keep things kind of straight and neat so that if I lose balance, the coffee isn't necessarily on the edge of the table or isn't necessarily in a place where I would most commonly make contact with it.
Yeah.
So, all right, my first one is actually pretty well related to yours, and it speaks to the big injury I had a few years ago.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of not having a way to get help when something like that happens. Like you're probably a good example more than me. You ride your bike alone sometimes.
Right.
And what if something goes wrong out there on the bike trail and your phone's dead? Or it's a Friday morning and there aren't a lot of people on the trail because it's not the weekend. I don't want to be morbid, but there have been a couple car accidents in the Sacramento area over the last couple of months where that person in that accident went unnoticed for 6, 8, 12 hours.
Wow.
Because maybe they were driving at night and there weren't a lot of cars around and they just went off the embankment and kind of ended up out of sight. And so I just think about that, not necessarily a car accident, but what if I'm in a hotel room and I fall and break a bone? Thankfully for me, my cell phone was in my hand, right? And it fell to a place where I could still reach it. But man, I don't know what I would have done had my cell phone not fallen within a couple of feet.
Yeah, well, and then you could call them, but then they couldn't get into the room, right?
Yeah,
for like 40 minutes or something.
I'm sure you and others can understand. I do not lock the deadbolt anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And I forget who it was or where, but having a conversation after that incident, and I think somebody straight up asked me, like, who do you expect to come in? Like, why do you lock all those locks? So I still do the chain or the bar.
You're right.
Because that's easy to cut if, anybody can do that or whatever. Right. It's the deadbolt and the key element that I'm like, I just don't trust that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway, not having a way to get help is a fear of mine.
Yep. Well, and that's probably a healthy fear also because it forces us to kind of think through like, okay, make sure I got my cell phone all charged up before I go out on the ride or whatever. So
exactly. My
number 2 is a fear of moths. I'm
like the little flying creature.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of them. I think it's more of like a primal. Like logically, I understand they're not gonna hurt me. It's just a moth, right? But they're so unpredictable the way they fly. Like you just never know which way they're going, and they're so I have a fear
they're
of
scary. They're mean.
Exactly.
Wow, I've never heard anybody say that. I feel like some people are going to be able to relate to some of our fears. I'm going to be surprised if anybody can relate to that one. To be completely transparent with our listeners, Kyle and I, we haven't shared our fears with each other, but we both said, okay, let's come to the table with 5. And we didn't want to make them all morbid and serious and depressing. So that second one is kind of, I guess you can call it silly.
Yeah.
Real.
It is.
But, and so mine is also in the same vein, but it's snakes.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't do well with snakes. I don't like to see them on TV or a movie. I certainly don't want to see one out in the yard or driving down the road. Like, when I see them on the bike trail, I will literally go as far away around it as possible. Like, even if it's obviously smashed dead, I still will go way around it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What do you think about those videos that you see on like Instagram or whatever? Somebody catching like a rattlesnake or a viper or something. Oh my gosh.
You even see the ones where people have a fake toy snake just to scare friends and family.
Oh, yeah.
Even those freak me out. Like, I want nothing to do with that prank.
Or have you seen the ones where they put a cucumber out and the cat thinks it's a snake? Oh my gosh. Just Google cat cucumber. Probably.
Can't wait.
All right. My number 3. When I'm riding my trike, I'm riding down the street and there's parked cars on my right and there's a lane of traffic on my left sometimes, right? And so you got to kind of hug the cars that are parked so you're not in the lane. But then I always think about a door opening when I'm right at the wrong time, right? And just getting smashed. So, that was one of the fears that I was thinking about. It's kind of specific, but...
That one's very legit, right? It's real. But I don't know how often it happens, but we've all seen it in movies, right? That you just plow right into a door.
Yeah.
Mine also specific, but probably a little more serious. Kind of speaks to what you were sharing about with Shane in episode 174. There is a fear of being alone long term. And I don't say it's a fear that consumes me. Like, it's not something I think about every day. It's, it's not at a place of, I'm not doing anything about it, so obviously it's not the biggest fear of my life or in my life.
Right.
But there's a part of me that thinks, man, I'm getting old, and even not so much who's going to take care of me, because I feel pretty independent still, and, I'm very optimistic that I'll always be. But, like, who I can cry with, who I can laugh with, who, that person, or even people. It doesn't, I don't even mean it has to be a partner of sorts or a lover, but, those core people that are always in my circle or always, a phone call away. So it's probably more related to a person, a significant other, but...
Right. Yeah. I think about that too, because I'm in a very similar situation where I'm not really doing it. You said that. I'm not doing anything about it. So, and I just think about, like, there's no reason why I'm not in the same position in 25 years where I haven't done anything about it. And I still, that's something I would like, but it just hasn't happened, right?
Yeah.
And I think about that too, for sure.
It's not a separate one on my list, but it is related to the first one, right? If you had a person and they hadn't heard from you for, 4, 6, 8 hours, they'd probably wonder, right? They'd start to call around. Even today, I feel like I do have some friends, and especially my mom, who would probably start getting nervous, but it would take 3 or 4 days.
Yeah,
I call my mom every couple of days, but I don't feel like there's anybody right now. If if I didn't show up at work, somebody's making a phone call. But if it's the weekend,
I
might go a couple of days before somebody's like, wonder where Sean is. And next thing you know, I'm upside down in a ditch somewhere. I don't know. If you had that person, maybe it's less likely for that sort of thing to go unnoticed.
So your significant other is a safety thing for you, then, right? Like it's a safety measure.
Maybe.
Maybe that's the problem, Sean.
Maybe that, yeah. Because, on my Tinder profile, the first question is, are you okay taking care of me? And so I guess people don't know. No, I'm kidding. That's not true.
Awesome. All right, my fourth one. It's kind of silly, but just think about this, man. You're driving down the road, and all of a sudden the ground opens up into a giant sinkhole. Oh my gosh, isn't that freaky?
I mean, yeah. I mean, very unlikely, but
it happens.
It could be an earthquake or yeah.
You're right. I mean, you're right. There's all kinds of mines all around the U.S., right? I don't think I'm on top of a mine, but there's a few towns that aren't towns anymore because they were built on top of a mine, and there were sinkholes all the time. I mean, it's a thing, man. It happens.
Yep.
So.
Nope. You're absolutely right. It's, again, not on my list, but with that, I feel like it could happen, but it's probably not going to happen. Along those lines, getting buried alive, that freaks me out.
My gosh.
Throw me in a wooden coffin and then, the movies.
Or
that, I do not want that.
or getting stuck in an avalanche. You hear stories of that sometimes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Can't even imagine.
Anyway, my for real fourth on the list. Also a little more relaxed in nature. I've got a weird thing against heights. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's normal. I don't know. I don't have any problem flying. I have no issue. I love takeoff and landing, and I love staring out the window. I don't get sick to my stomach in those moments. But when I'm driving across a bridge, and it's a long bridge like the Golden Gate, there's a tightness about me. When I'm standing, checking out tall buildings and you get up to the top floor. I remember going my first trip to Australia in that hemisphere. I think it's in Melbourne, the tallest building, right, in that region. And I don't know for sure, but it's like 80 some odd stories.
Yeah.
And they have a deck toward the top. It's not open air, but like toward the top floor, it's an observation deck. And I remember going up to it, had to check it out, bought tickets. And I remember getting down on my hands and knees and inching my way up to the window. I can walk around there fine, but if I get closer to the window to look down or look out, I freak out and I start, losing balance. So I remember specifically setting my backpack down and just kind of scooting over to the wall.
Yeah.
So that I was somewhat braced because, there's that fear. Oh, what if I fall into the window and the window breaks and I fall? Yeah.
I'm not afraid of heights, but I've definitely had those experiences where I was at the Sears Tower. I forget what Willis Tower, I think it's called now, maybe, in Chicago. Yeah. And they have, you get up there on the 95th floor or whatever it is, and they have a glass floor. So you step out onto it and you can look straight down. And, oh, man,
I saw on Instagram or maybe TikTok earlier this week, I forget where, maybe United States, maybe not, but it's a building like this, but you step up to the window and the building, it's like a ride. It actually tilts out to where you're kind of, not quite parallel, but you're moving in a parallel position with the ground, but you're, 90 stories up. And just even just thinking about it right now, my hands are getting clammy.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah. All right, my fifth one is, we're going to end this list for me on a serious note. It's very similar to your last one, your third one, remaining independent. And I think this kind of relates to the catastrophic injury one that I started off with, where I just don't want to be dependent on someone else. And I think it's a healthy fear, but I also think it gets in my way sometimes. I think I keep people at arm's length because I'm like, no, I don't need your help. I can do this myself, because I always need to prove to myself that I am independent. I can handle this, even with a crazy disability that's very rare and very debilitating. I can still make it in my life. But I think that's a dominating feature of a lot of situations in my life, is just wanting to remain independent and prove that I can.
Let's break that down a little bit.
Yeah.
When you say, you want to be independent, are there certain degrees or levels? Like, you don't want somebody to cook a dinner, or you don't want somebody to feel financially responsible for you. Like, if you get to a place where you can't really work, can you define?
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I think the employment in making my own income is probably a big one, where, it's hard for me to accept help sometimes, like from my parents. Yeah. When there's a financial situation, and I'm like, I do everything I can think of to avoid needing help. And ultimately, I feel incredibly supported, and I do accept help sometimes. But I think that my need to be independent gets in the way of some of those rational conversations.
Yeah. I was curious because, I don't know, I feel like somebody opening the door for me is, I don't feel like that for me personally. That's not a loss of independence, right? If somebody's willing to take my cup of coffee and carry it upstairs for me, I don't feel less independent. But if I think long term, like, will I still be able to make money? Or will I still be able to drive myself to a doctor's appointment or an errand? Those kind of bigger things, I would say that's a fear of mine too. I can relate with that one.
Yeah, thank you for more I feel like if we can define these things and voice them out loud, like the principle of this podcast, right? If we can talk about these things, they have less power over us. And so I appreciate hearing another person explain and being like, oh, no, yes, that is what I was thinking. So, totally. Yeah.
For the record, I'm okay with somebody wanting to fold my laundry. Like, that level of dependence is just fine.
Yeah.
You can even wash the dishes and clean the house. I'm okay with that.
Yep. I would agree with that as well.
All right. My fifth and final one, again, is a little less tangible. It's not like snakes or heights, but it's real. And I don't mean to bum anybody out, but I think it's just to inspire thought, right? Hopefully. I'm afraid of, in a sense, dying too early. Not because of death, but because of not doing everything I can. And to an extent, I feel like that could be said that could be true of me right now, right? I'm 40, almost 41, and I haven't quite done everything I thought I would have done had you asked me 20 years ago. And so now I feel like there's this urgency to cram in a whole lot of stuff in the next 20 to 40 years so that when I die, there isn't this notion that, yeah, he had a lot of good ideas, but never did anything about them. Yeah. So I guess ultimately, if I had to narrow it down to a few words, the fear of not doing as much as I can is real for me.
You know, do you think that takes away from your enjoyment or appreciation of moments, maybe benign moments, that we all know it's the little things in life that bring joy, right? And those moments of joy and peace, do you think that limits those if you're always trying to think of the next thing that you haven't done yet?
I would have to say yes. I don't know for sure, but I imagine it's got to have some impact.
So, I mean, in that respect, is that a fair trade to think about, like, if one of your biggest fears is not getting enough done in life, is it fair to trade some of those peaceful and joyful moments for trying to get as much done as possible? And I don't know that I have the answer this or that, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I can speak to that. I imagine maybe it's not a fair trade. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think about that one, it is a bit philosophical, right?
Right.
Kind of up in the air. But, I think, again, not to be morbid, but, the day I die, what are people going to say about me?
Right.
And, obviously I hope people say nice things. He's a good guy, ambitious, whatever. But I'm always afraid there's people that are close to me that'll think, man, a lot of good ideas also just died because he never pursued them, or he never began the process, or got that foundation built. And I think there's a healthy level to that. But I think you're right. If that's keeping me from enjoying the process as I go, then yeah, maybe there's something unhealthy there.
Well, I think it's just a balance, like anything else, right? It's not black and white, as we all know. So, yeah. All right, Sean, that's a lot of philosophy for today. My head is pounding a little bit as we wrap up here. So let's get on to our thank you notes. I love thank you notes and showing gratitude because it helps me transition out of that head pounding space where it's like, all right, we got to, fulfill our life's purpose. But no, let's just be grateful for what we have for a second. And so who do you have to thank today?
I'm repeating a thank you. I don't remember when, but it was a while ago. My stylist or barber is Chavez, and he does it part-time. He works for the state full-time, but he's done hair and that kind of thing for a long time. And I've probably been seeing him for, I would say, 7 years now. And when I need a haircut and maybe his appointment book looks full, I'll shoot him a text and be like, hey, do you have any flexibility on this day? And just the willingness to get creative with me and to move things around or open up an appointment that he was hoping to keep closed. I just appreciate that level of willingness to work with me. So thank you, Chavez. In fact, today is one of those days. I ended up going to his shop at 9 a.m. on a Sunday just to get my hair cut because it was way overdue. And he only does weekends, and that was the only thing that could work for both his schedule and mine. So
yeah, nice. I don't think I've ever had a 9 a.m. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had a 9 a.m. haircut.
Yep, me neither. I didn't even know that those were possible. Anyway, what about yours?
A couple years ago, I told a story about a bike shop that I didn't have a very good interaction with. It was just one employee that wasn't super helpful, right?
Yeah.
And I've been going to this other bike shop close by. I usually go to a bike shop called Bike Sport, but it's a little farther away. So anyway, I've been going to REI bike shop here in King of Prussia. It's only 3 minutes away from my house. And every time I go in, I have a weird bike, right? It's not like other bikes. It's got 3 wheels instead of 2, and things are in a little bit different place. And it's not something they work on all the time, but they see it as an opportunity to learn something new and to explore something and help me out. Yeah. And I really appreciate that when I come to them with, like, I want to switch out some of the gears. And I imagine with a bike shop, with this other bike shop that I was talking about, I didn't have a good relationship or a good interaction with, they might have been like showing some resistance. But I go to this bike shop at REI, and they're like, all right, yeah, let's do this. This looks kind of cool. Tell me a little more, Yeah. So I like that approach a lot. It's a good one.
Now, when you're talking REI as in the chain.
Right. And they have a shop in their store. Yeah.
Yeah. That's impressive, especially with the unique bike like a Catrike or any kind of, non-upright bike.
Right.
I would probably hesitate to go to a big chain. Like, I wouldn't even think they'd be willing. Like, I literally wouldn't even think about taking my bike there. So I love hearing that you did and you had a good experience.
Yeah, and there must be something in the management because every single person at that bike shop, no matter who I talk to, has the same attitude. So yeah, it's great.
Something to be said for that willingness to try it out. Let's see what happens, and remaining positive and surface friendly in the midst of that. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that'll help add a lot of value to those like me who are resistant, especially when it comes to a big chain. Well, as always, like Kyle said, it helps get it out of our own head, but it also helps make the world a better place. Expressing gratitude makes somebody appreciate themselves a little bit more and recognize that they're doing some good things in the world. So we'd encourage you to express gratitude, send a text, write a note, whatever it may be. Journal it if you need to. We appreciate you listening and being a part of the journey with us. We'd be curious what your fears are. If you want to shoot us a review or an email, please do that, or let us know if we're way off or if we're hitting the nail on the head. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.